Training versus temperament, how to tell the difference. An example using 3 doodle puppies being evaluated for service dog use. It is important to be able to spot a trained behavior versus innate temperament, especially for service dogs. In this video, I will show how to spot a trained behavior and why using novel items the puppy has not been exposed to is important for a temperament evaluation. All evaluations require puppies to be separated from their litter mates. Please like and subscribe to support this great content. Thank you. With service dogs or any dog, it's better to start with a puppy or dog with a good temperament that has a higher chance of being a stable, well-mannered, biddable dog. To assess this, a temperament evaluation can reveal the innate personality of a dog or puppy, so you know what you are starting with, where the puppy's deficits are, and where the puppy excels. And you can make sure this temperament will match the dog's purpose. This puppy was being chosen for service dog work for a client in the wheelchair. The breeder was aware of this requirement beforehand, so we tested the puppies for comfort around a wheelchair. But what we saw was really startling. Temperament evaluations cannot and should not be prepped or studied for by the breeder or the puppies. Exposure to the world is one thing, but trying to train a puppy to appear different than it is really doesn't fool a good tester. It may fool an average pet owner though, so pay attention and learn how to spot it. A stable dog would have no problem adjusting to the presence of a wheelchair, even if the puppy never saw a wheelchair before. So there is no reason to try and cheat on the temperament test by prepping the puppies beforehand. Here is an example of a stable puppy going into a home improvement store and encountering large wheeled objects for the first time. Notice her body language is loose and soft, and her tail is low and wagging, and she looks happy. When the cart moves, she startles a little bit, which is normal, but she recovers very quickly and continues to follow the cart. This puppy has not had any training around large wheeled objects. Here's an example of a green-collared puppy we tested. Some of the speeds are faster just to move through the examples quicker. The puppy is in the pen with the tester and is showing no interest in the person and even trying to climb out of the pen away from him. But when the wheelchair is brought over and placed in the pen, he starts to show interest. Once the person sits in the chair, the puppy starts to think about approaching the wheelchair. Here the puppy is using his nose and assessing the issue, but he is too timid to approach. He does this for a few minutes. A normal stable puppy would probably go up to the wheelchair and sniff it. Once the cat walks by, which the puppy's probably familiar with, it entices the puppy to move closer to the wheelchair. And then he starts to show a behavior near the wheelchair, which is indicative of him being fed from the ground around the wheelchair. He pokes the person's leg here as if to ask for a treat. And he also is sniffing the ground, similar to dogs that are looking for food on the ground. Take note, the puppy in the previous video did not stick around the wheeled objects and sniff the ground like this. Notice he is willing to approach the person as long as they are sitting in the wheelchair. Here the pup sits and looks at the person, similar to what a dog would do that has been giving treats for sitting. Here's a comparison of the puppy's behavior to my dog Shiloh's behavior when she's in the garage, waiting for food to drop as I fill up the dog's food bowls. Notice here she's looking at me, and then I drop a few bits on the floor to demonstrate, and she goes to eat them. And then when there isn't any more food, as there isn't for the puppies in this video, she starts sniffing around to see if she can find some more food. And then when there isn't any, she sits, hoping I might give her a treat for doing so. This is very similar to this puppy's behavior and the 2 puppies that will follow. The green-collared puppy continues to ignore the person in the wheelchair even when he pats on the wheel to get the puppy's attention. A puppy that was interested in people would at least come over to say hello to the person. Here's how the green puppy responds to a common object like a water bottle being thrown in the pen. You can see he's quite scared and his body posture looks like a feral dog, as illustrated here. This is why it's important to use an object the puppy hasn't seen before to test a fear response. Puppy continues to sniff the ground where the wheelchair was, probably looking for treats that might be left over after their training session in the wheelchair. It is important to note that even though this puppy will approach a wheelchair, it does not mean his temperament is sound, and he is overly concerned with the tester approaching closer to the pen here and backs up. If this puppy was accustomed and not afraid of people, he would not be backing up when the tester got closer. This puppy is genetically fearful. He will not be an easy pet, but definitely he is not a temperament made for a service dog. The only thing this puppy was mildly interested in and not afraid of was the wheelchair and the cat. Compare to a puppy that is people-centric. You can see that this puppy stays near me. She's happy to see me. Her tail is wagging. And even though she gets distracted, she quickly comes back to me to say hello and get more attention. She's not overly pushy, but yet she likes to be around people. This is a much different temperament than the doodle puppy that we were just evaluating. Doodle puppy was aloof and fearful, not suited for a service dog. Here is another puppy with an orange collar on. This puppy is a little bit braver, but then he retreats after sniffing the bowl, and he sits down and doesn't investigate further. This is not an ideal reaction either, and ideally the puppy should continue to investigate the bowl a little more to assess what it is. The puppy stays on the other side of the pen from the bowl. Here is an example of a shelter dog reacting to a fearful stimulus. You can see she startles but quickly goes over and fully investigates the clipboard I dropped on the floor, and then even stays near it while I pick it up. She has assessed it and is no longer afraid of it. Here the tester shows the orange puppy a treat, hoping to get him interested in the food. You can see here that he retreats to the person's lap, but then isn't interested in the food treat at all. It is interesting these puppies are so interested in a wheelchair, but not interested in a delicious treat. The pup shows slight interest in the tester here. Normal puppies would normally be interested in something this delicious. He goes over to it, sniffs it a little bit, and then walks away. The only thing this puppy is interested in, again, is a wheelchair. So we're going to bring the wheelchair into the pen, and you can see the puppy starts wagging his tail. These puppies look the happiest when they see a wheelchair, which is very different than what a puppy should react who has never seen a wheelchair. These puppies are very familiar with the wheelchair, and you might say, well, what's the big deal? They exposed them to a wheelchair when they were young. Yes, they did, but that doesn't change their overall temperament. This puppy's temperament is still rather fearful and a bit aloof, and we have to wonder if the breeder purposely conditioned the puppies to like a wheelchair since she knew the client used a wheelchair. The puppy moves away when the tester approaches the wheelchair in fear of the person. Here the puppy starts sniffing the ground like the first puppy. This is, again, the same behavior a puppy would show if it was looking for food on the ground or eating food from the ground. And you can see when the person sits in the chair, he's even a little more interested and not afraid of the tester while sitting in the chair. This is likely because a person sat in the wheelchair to give these puppies food, not because he likes the person. Here the puppy keeps sniffing the ground. And then when the person comes back towards the wheelchair, the puppy sits, again, in anticipation of a treat. You can see he's very interested in the person as long as he's near the wheelchair. Here he startles from a metal bowl, which is likely a new object to this puppy, and then goes again to the tester when he's near the wheelchair. He's whining because he is anticipating getting fed. He is acting very much like a dog who has been fed around a wheelchair and taught to sit around a wheelchair. This will probably make these puppies unafraid of wheelchairs their whole lives, but they will still be afraid of most things in the world. Here's another puppy with a gray collar. This puppy is much more social with the tester. He's more interested in being around the tester and isn't afraid of him like the other puppies were. This is one reason why it's important to test the litter mates separately so you can see each puppy's individual temperament or personality. The puppy is somewhat interested in the tester. He comes back when he's called. His tail tucks slightly when he's being touched, which could mean he's not used to being touched or he's slightly afraid of it. You can see this puppy is sticking with the tester a little bit longer, but still wandering off to do his own thing. He still ignores the tester when he calls him this time. Here you can see how this puppy reacts to a water bottle, much better than his siblings. He doesn't run away, and he recovers nicely from being scared by the scary water bottle. The bowl is a little bit different. He doesn't recover from that as well. But he's still willing to walk somewhat near it. Ideally, he would have gone up to it. Here, the puppy acts like he may want to go to the tester, but he's afraid to walk past the bowl to do so. For a service dog, this would be a major problem, since he couldn't get past the fear of objects to help his handler. Be a service dog out in public and would encounter many things that might scare him, except a wheelchair. Here comes the wheelchair, and the puppy is interested. Turning the wheelchair actually scares the puppy a little bit, and he runs away. But he quickly recovers and goes up to the chair. You can see the puppy's tail tuck here a little bit, so even though he's conditioned to the wheelchair, he's still a little afraid of it moving. And again, he starts sniffing the ground just like his siblings did. seems to be super excited when the person comes in and sits in the wheelchair. He gets a little more animated, and again he sits like the previous puppy, looking like he's anticipating a treat. These puppies really love this wheelchair and don't really care for a whole lot of other things. This puppy actually stays closest to the tester when he sits in the wheelchair and actually sits on his feet. Here the tester gets up and then sits in the chair again, and the puppy hears the noise and re-engages with, I won't say the tester, but re-engages with the chair, and I think looking for food to drop here. All these puppies keep looking at the ground, similar to what my dog Shiloh did in the garage. And again, I want to reiterate that exposing puppies to wheelchairs is not a bad thing. It's a good thing to expose puppies to things they may see in their life while they're still very young. What is bad is the breeder perhaps purposely trying to condition the puppies to like the wheelchair to perhaps mislead the buyer. However, the chances may be that the breeder has no idea that these puppies' temperaments aren't stable and was just trying to help the puppies get used to the wheelchair. Regardless of the intent, these puppies are not service dog material. The key to deciphering these evaluations is the inconsistency of the puppy's behaviors to the wheelchair, the people, and the objects like the water bottle. If these puppies' temperaments were sound, they would be more consistent across the board with their interest, sociability, and confidence. The only thing consistent about these 3 doodle puppies is that they all show immense interest in the wheelchair when they don't really care for anything else, likely due to conditioning with food prior to the test. Here's an example of a puppy that is consistent. He likes people, he's friendly, he accepts touch well. You can see he's very confident, but not pushy. He likes to be petted. And when I make a loud noise with this cup, he startles, but then he goes to investigate it, even though he's tired. So this is consistent temperament and consistent behavior across the board. Whether you're looking for a pet or a service dog, use caution when evaluating dogs and know the signs the dog has been pre-trained to stimuli so you don't get snookered and misread their temperament.